Welcome everybody to a new edition of Leaders in Motion. As always, coming to you from WBTF headquarters in the UAE, in Dubai, more precisely at MCI UAE HQ in the World Trade Center. Today we have the honor of having two colleagues with us. We have Ali, who is a partner at Fragomen, based in the UAE, based in Dubai, and we have Carsten, who is the CEO of Nomadic. And we have a bunch of questions that we will be putting forward, and you feel free, gentlemen, to answer them, take them as it makes most sense to yourselves. So, welcome. Let's get going. The first question I'll put out is, can you please briefly recap what have been going on over the past couple of weeks, almost months now, and help us understand from your perspective how governments and systems have responded to the current ongoings?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, firstly, Dominic, for having us on, and it's a pleasure to be here. So, obviously, ending quarter 1, and I would say most of quarter 2, and some might argue we're still not completely out of it. It's been it has been a challenging time for the broader Middle East region, to put it that way. Obviously, a lot of what we've experienced has underpinnings that are geopolitically sort of linked. Without getting too much into the sort of geopolitics of it all, I think if one way to describe it is, it was effectively a stress test for government systems. And in our line of work, immigration and mobility, it certainly was a stress test for global mobility systems, not just from the government side, but also from a planning perspective for the private sector at large. Obviously, in the weeks or months, as you said, that have transpired, there's been a lot of moving parts. We saw a lot of disruption to travel, particularly airspace closures, land border closures. Certain embassies closed down. The ones that were operating on very limited windows, usually only catering to citizens and helping them get repatriation flights and things of that nature. So that obviously impacted visa issuance, passport issuance, things of that nature. What is very interesting to note, because you asked how have governments responded, is I think by and large, governments across the region, particularly the UAE, really managed to continue business as usual as much as possible. There were periods of time where certain government officers that are overseeing the immigration and labor authorities were advised to work remotely or work from home, but they were still working. Applications were still being processed, renewals were still being effected. And whilst there were no blanket amnesty schemes, by and large, there was a pragmatic approach that was taken by governments in terms of introducing grace periods for people that were stuck, couldn't leave, or residents that were stuck overseas couldn't enter. So, we saw a lot of adaptation, and we saw a lot of quick adaptation, even despite initial uncertainty.
And a lot of common sense in that case, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Great. Anything to add, Carsten?
I just mentioned it all. Living in the region, Ali has lived that much closer than I have.
Okay, great. And on the other hand, of course, you've commented on governments and governmental organizations, but the other big number one topic is, of course, the client side. What's going on there? What do you see happening there?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And, we've been asked to weigh in by clients as well as to see what their peers are doing. And, just talking about it with a few other kind of regional publications as well. So Look, during the height of it, or during the initial stages of the crisis, there was uncertainty. We did notice some of our clients pause and recalibrate just to see how things happen. But by and large, what was very interesting to see was, at least in our clients, they didn't stop hiring, right? Or they didn't stop moving people, or they didn't stop business and operations. What they did was they kind of adapted, much like governments, right? So, for example, one very common trend that we saw was if there were any offer letters or hiring that was initiated, the offers weren't necessarily rescinded. They were, these individuals were often onboarded remotely, sometimes in their home countries. Sometimes they were placed perhaps somewhere else, parked somewhere else until airspace is resumed. Even for some companies that allowed their employees to, repatriate if they deemed necessary or if they felt safe. Many of them have either returned or are in the process of returning. So again, there was an adaptation process. I think what we saw was cautious optimism, or what we see now is cautious optimism. I think certain sectors obviously have rebounded more so than others. And what we also see is a lot of these sectors that are rebounding faster than others are often in industries that are being supported by government economic stimulus packages. We saw that Dubai announced a 2.5 billion dirham economic stimulus package. Abu Dhabi has announced billions of dirhams worth of public sector projects that are impacting engineering, financial services, technology. So a lot of businesses that are operating within those sectors are rebounding and returning back to form quite a bit. We're even seeing a resumption to regional travel where required. So I think that's a good sign of resilience.
Great. I saw on LinkedIn today that the train system is up and running. There was the first train between Fujairah and Abu Dhabi yesterday or this morning. So these projects continue, which is good. Would you be close to saying that things are effectively very close to back to normal in the mobility and travel space, or would that be too optimistic?
I think we're getting there, right? So if from what for just some sources have sort of quoted that there was a slightly under 3% growth in private sector hiring in Q1 of this year. And what I'm expecting, just based on conversations with clients, just based on observations and trends, et cetera, is that we will likely end the year and start 2027 at a similar level, right? So it might not necessarily be as high as the same time last year, and that's natural. That's very kind of, as you said, common sense. But I think what we are seeing is a slow and gradual return to form. I mean, one of the things that has been so impressive across the region, particularly in the UAE, is, the government's done a great job of sort of keeping everything running, right? Whether it's government services, whether it's the safety of the people that live here. And if anything, that's resulted in even more confidence in the system. And of course, if there's confidence in the system, there's economic prosperity that comes with that.
Great. Good news. Good news. Optimism is always good. That's a good point. So, from a practical point of view, what are the steps that companies should now be looking at and taking to stay compliant and prepared going forward?
Yeah. So again, having a mobility strategy or a program level kind of approach to managing international relocations, your talent pool, your travel is it's more important than ever, right? quick suggestions from my side would be make sure you have a mobility protocol and a mobility program detailed and completely set out. Make sure that that program has contingency planning built into it. Don't necessarily wait to mobilize, hire, deploy, or mobilize talent until you need it. Use this time to sort of get up to speed. Otherwise, you run the risk of compliance issues when you rush everything, and you sometimes also run the risk of not having boots on the ground as quickly as you may need. So use this time to your advantage. And then lastly, one other thing that we're noticing is a lot of companies that are really using times of crisis to their advantage and really showing resilience. Those are companies that are not necessarily asking at this point, what do we do to just stay afloat? What do we do to just sort of weather the storm? They're thinking about the opportunities that are available right now and what position they're going to be when the dust settles. That's true resilience. So there's a lot of great talent that's available in the market right now that perhaps you wouldn't have access to last year. That's a great opportunity for some companies as well. There's obviously a lot of great acquisition opportunities available in the market right now as well. You can get a lot of bang for your buck. So these all represent great opportunities in times of crisis, and I would also urge businesses to kind of think about it from that perspective as well.
Mm-hmm. Sounds great. Carsten, anything to add from a global perspective? Are you hearing the same outside the region? Are you having similar discussions? Are you getting lots of client calls who want more information? Is it a business driver for you guys, a situation like this?
It is. I've been to the region now a couple of times during the last few months as well, and I could see that supporting what Ali said earlier, the traffic has picked up. Obviously, the airlines are back. You see more people at the airport, and when I was there in Dubai just last week, it felt like it was 4 months ago, 5 months ago, before the crisis. I think a lot of the takeaways from this is a lot of the travel managers have been used to dealing with crises over the years. There's been this or that crisis, different reasons, but sort of you end up with the same scenario. You got a number of people in a country or in a region, in this case, that you maybe or maybe not want to repatriate. So a lot of the clients that were working with just one or a few travel management companies worldwide would have a better overview very quickly of who they had where. And the clients who were working with multiple travel management companies would had to spend a few days figuring out exactly who they had. And because of the region, how it's made up a lot of expats, you have a lot of different passport holders in the region, and with dependents, maybe or maybe not. So once you have figured out who you have, and you might want to work with, obviously someone like us, but also a security company, and sort of overlay that data or those data points, you would know exactly who you have and where, and then you can start figuring out what to do. So I think for the next crisis, and unfortunately there will be a crisis somewhere in the world. It might be different reasons, but we know they tend to appear now and then. I would try and stay on top of, like, who do we have? What kind of passports do they have? Do they have valid travel documents? Because we saw quite a few who had travel documents that were expiring. That's just making things a little bit more complex when you're trying to leave sort of like as soon as you can, if that's your plan. Also, a lot of families have pets. And believe it or not, that's adding another complexity, because that doesn't mean you can just bring your pet. And then you might be married to someone with a different passport. You might have kids with, again, different passport. So staying on top of that is where it's become more complex than ever before, because then in the scenario of the Middle East, you only had a few sort of routes you could use. And it doesn't mean that you could enter the other countries just because you wanted to, because there's still elements of figuring out who is entering our country, security purposes, etc. now most of the other neighboring countries were trying to be flexible, but there was suddenly a lot of traffic through on land routes that you wouldn't usually see. So just be mindful of that. I think that's the lessons learned for the next crisis. And this crisis started on a Saturday, right? Just over the weekend, sort of the worst time you could expect it to happen as well.
Well, crises don't ask when is a good time for us to start, right? They just
Right.
happen. Yeah, and the timing is always bad, that's for sure. Okay, I think that's been quite a good overview, a good update from a local, regional, and global perspective. Anything to add, gentlemen?
I would just say, I mean, we've already mentioned earlier in the call when the interview that the region's done a lot to kind of like, get things back. And history shows that it bounces back very quickly. And you can see a lot of initiatives there. And you will see, I think the region will come back very soon. And it is a region for growth. So there's no way if you're a global company and you're truly global, you will also be including the Middle East in that statement. So companies are coming back if they're not already there, or they took a pause. They will be back, and people will want to move or travel to the region no matter what. And we've seen crises before; they pass, and then things are back to normal. So again, when I was there was no sign of anything just happened. It's easy for me to say who travel in and out, but you can't see any visible signs of anything just happened.
Yeah, I mean, just a kind of closing thought from my side is I'm expecting some interesting kind of I think we're going to see some interesting developments over the course of this year and potentially 2027 as well from an immigration and mobility perspective specifically. The UAE has over the past I would say 5 years or so really ramped up its efforts to attract the world's brightest minds, entrepreneurs, investors, high net worth individuals. We've seen things like the golden visa, the blue visa, the green visa. The digital nomad visa was introduced. There's a lot of kind of. It's clear that the government is sort of molding the legal kind of framework to modernize it and make it fit for purpose for the needs of the modern businessman or the modern company. So I think we're going to notice some kind of adaptations to this system as well over the months and potentially year to come. We already saw a few weeks ago that the property visa threshold, investment threshold, so if, for property owners to actually get a residence permit, that threshold was effectively, the floor was taken out. So as of right now, if you own any property in the UAE,
you're in.
Anything really, you're eligible for a residence permit. Right. So we're going to see concessions and flexibilities like that, I would imagine. So I think interesting times ahead.
Fantastic. I think that's a great closing word. Interesting times ahead. Thank you very much. It was great talking to you. Let's do this again in a couple of months with an update. Thank you very much, Ali. Thank you very much, Carsten.
Pleasure. Thank you for having us.